Yeah, do you want to briefly present yourself, or?
I'm Abbi, and this is Jesper Hansen, and Jesper's going to start.
That's very fast. So we'll try to stick to time, even though we do have time. I get it around there, but we won't care so much as we decide to stick to time. I'm going to just briefly set the scene, what we've done, and then I can think over more about the consequences, the impact of it. And a lot of it does come really back to the first talk we heard today. But really, we started sort of working together in sort of around 2020, and then when I joined
July 2020.
2020, yeah, joined the Faculty of Humanities, where part of my role is working with that faculty, though I do many other things centrally as well. We began to talk about how do we want to frame our partnership, how do we want to sort of begin working towards impact, because the faculty have been, maybe that is notoriously difficult to penetrate into. Also, the faculty is even for UCL standards quite complex. There's a lot of cross faculty and cross faculty work going on. Students studying many different constellations, and as we put down here, there's a limited understanding of the local practice. So, of course, there is a faculty structure, and there are all the different departments, and within the departments, there are different programs. And in some places, you see the programs are quite coherent. Sometimes engineering is relatively coherent. In our humanities, it is often the programs are quite small, and there will be programs where there are only a couple of students on them. So again, the complexity is quite high. And so, linked to sort of the time that I was joined, of course, is that the pandemic did increase the use of digital platforms, which was definitely underused even more than it is today beforehand. Now, you don't necessarily have to read all this, but it's sort of like a timeline of what we've been doing. And just, to get the idea of it, we sort of started quite early on by thinking, we need to develop some projects ourselves. We need to get sort of sure that there's a faculty voice, not just drawing on studies from the sector, because again, if we talk to our colleagues in the faculty, you need to say we're special. That doesn't apply to us. So we need to start to link between the faculty and all the research happening elsewhere. So again, we looked into the students' online experience of online learning, and when we did that, staff came to us. It was a really great moment. Staff were like, but I don't want to hear our stories. And we were like, yeah, we had actually thought about doing that at that point. We were focused on the students, but then we did something with staff to also include them. Then we recently really prioritized working with partial students. So we've been looking at students how they experience B&E and focus on the digital side, but also looking more broader at the student experience. And then this year we're looking into their experiences of being sort of dialogue with the teachers around the quality of the teaching. What we would have called evaluation, which of course we want to call dialogue. That's key to the time. And that's what we're working on again now. We had a survey last term, so in a mixed methods study, and this term we're doing some focus groups. And I think Abbi will talk more about the actual sort of results of it. But again, the idea is to try and get involved in the faculty and show how that can lead to sort of strategic changes and get that link between the disparate, programs and colleagues, and maybe the sort of more strategic top. Yeah.
So one of the nice things about our roles, my role is the Faculty Learning Technology Lead. It's a new role at faculty level. So really looking at digital education and practice at that faculty level. And yes, we're sort of addressing the teaching and learning at that level. We have a lot of autonomy for this kind of role. There's really nobody asking us to do, frankly, anything at all. So we have, with our professional experience, we sort of look around and say, well, what would we like? What are we doing? What is the problem here? And we can imagine all sorts of problems, but we thought that probably getting a characterization and illustration of the student voice and the student experience would be particularly useful here. And establishing that at a faculty level, as Jesper said, we're very kind of disconnected faculty. So students can take modules from across the faculty, but also from across the entire university, that's outside our remit. But the main issue that we had, I was saying, kind of the incidental problems, the reported problems, conversations with the central team, were students' experience being so different and so inconsistent that was then major experience in a way. Inconsistency was the student experience. So how do you convey this to academics without saying you specifically must change the thing that you are doing? The person next to you, they can say that. We thought that by asking the students what using the VLE is actually like, what is your perception of Moodle? A lot of people say it's very difficult to find things on Moodle. Well, yes, if everybody puts things in a different place. I don't know when reading week is. Well, that's because you're in 3 departments and they've got 3 different reading weeks. And these are things that we would not have necessarily imagined. You can talk to departments and they know when their reading week is, but they don't know when the next one. So utilising that faculty level conversation to find these recurring issues that are the students' predominant experience that detract from their disciplinary teaching and learning. So we're able to address that with, they provide these, this illustration provides leverage for us to go to academic colleagues and say, you know that template? Well, actually, if you use it, then everybody will be able to find the thing. You know, if the assessment is in the assessment box, the mystery is solved. And it sounds so obvious until you suddenly say, we surveyed 100 students from across the faculty, and actually this was everyone's biggest problem. And then they go, actually, you know what, my module might be contributing to that. And it is a small thing, and again, with that sort of autonomy and that practice room that we have, we're able to go in and say, and this is how you use that template, and this is where you should put the date, and this is the date manager rule, which just lets you have that consistency. So we can also then report back to the faculty and talk about what we actually do with our jobs that they pay us to do, and how we're great value, and that's also very useful. And then you've got these iterative studies that we're building. So each one starts with characterization of the issues we're identifying in the last, so that we're never going to start from scratch. Yes, every cohort is different. Yes, we're mindful of all the different years that we're looking at, and that picture will shift. But also, it's about our roles, not ourselves as people. So were someone, heaven forbid, to come in and replace Jesper, then they would have a starting understanding of the faculty that I think certainly I would have found very handy when I started at UCL. I just kind of went, well, what is happening? What is happening here? You would be able to look at these things and at least have some understanding.
I am almost job.
So, yeah. I think the impact has kind of surprised us both in a sense. I mean, our reports, we've made sort of short reports on each of these things. We've worked with students to develop presentations. We've been able to present into central meetings and into faculty level meetings. And people have been frankly delighted, I think, just to have some sort of tangible evidence. I think we've been lucky we've had a high volume of student responses. As I say, we've had 100 on each student survey. With our academics, we had 110 academics out of 400 responding to tell us about their academic experience. So we've had great engagement. I think it also shows the appetite to be heard by a more neutral space that is the faculty. You know, when I think we ask students to evaluate their modules, their academics, I think that can feel very personal and sometimes a little dangerous. But the faculty is a neutral space, and yet it is the level at which we work. And finally, it lets us just represent our faculty back into those central areas, which is also a particularly huge part of my room in digital education. So we're looking at our Moodle upgrade, and I can say, well, actually for small group teaching, which is the main type of teaching we're doing in arts and humanities, this is what would be useful. This is the way that we use Moodle. Maybe actually these small things that don't necessarily feel are important in somewhere like medicine, where everything is quite templated and regimented. Actually in arts and humanities, people aren't doing it like that. So I'm able to report in centrally and talk about those things as Jesper does in Arena. Again, it opens doors, it helps us collaborate with other areas. There are faculty learning technology leads in every faculty, and it just enables us to have deeper conversations in the different languages in which we work. So that's about it.
Probably go for 20 minutes.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, if you go 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. We've got 25, well, we haven't really got 25 minutes in this session because we've got to get back to the main lecture hall. But question, we've got plenty of time for discussion. So, questions? Yes, amendments.
So what are the main themes that are kind of coming out of this?
It's a very inconsistent life being a UCL student. The things that you do on Monday, the things that you do on Tuesday will be in different ways. No one will necessarily tell you how or know if you ask them. But there will be points for getting it right, secret points for understanding. No. I think mostly inconsistency, but the force that inconsistency takes. I think also there's Arnold's point about what was that phrase that he used? We talk about students being over-surveyed, and sort of that feedback fatigue, and our faculty tutors said that it didn't seem that students had dialogue fatigue. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I was just impressed by the number of responses you've got. I've heard so much, including today, about surveys that have disappointing numbers of responses. I was wondering if you could give us some tips for increasing the rate of response, either with students or colleagues.
I think for me, so I'm really interested in staff-student partnerships, and we have a GCL there called change makers. Of course, it's a generic term. It was less generic, I feel, when it was introduced to GCL. It becomes sort of a bit of a buzzword. But I do think working with students has benefits on so many levels, if you will. I mean, it has a benefit that they can reach into the students much more authentically. If we go and ask, it's like UCL is asking, the faculty is asking, but actually these messages coming from students. Actually, we've been invited to not just represent students, but we've been invited to co-develop the project. We are supporting the analysis, or sometimes even doing main analysis. We are part of the reporting back. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is, of course, that students really do shape the research. So, for instance, when we did the survey for the continuous module dialogue, again, in a module evaluation just done over time, if you will, we had to come up with some questions we would like to ask, because again, we have a voice as well as staff. It's not just trying to say students should do what they want to. So we come up with our questions. And what we found quite quickly is that these questions did not actually make sense to the students. They were saying, we don't know what this means. So had we just gone out and asked these questions, I mean, obviously we're going to pilot and all that. But again, here we just get the students involved right from the beginning. So to me, these are two sort of central points of it. But I think also, again, that we're creating a narrative in the faculty where students know that they're being listened to. The last project, I'm not talking about now, but the last project, what they said about one of the problems about the continuous module dialogue is when the loops are closed. And of course, we know that. But students will still say, no, we love being in dialogue, but it makes no sense if you don't know what's happening. And it doesn't matter if nothing happens. If we just know why it's not happening, or why it's happening next year. And again, we're now creating a series of loops where it's quite tangible how students are being. So it's not just we're going to survey you for our benefits. It's also for our benefits.
But I think also it's so, for example, when we were recruiting student partners to work with this term, we were able to say, well, last term our students came with us to Lincoln to the race conference to present with us. We wrote an article with them, which was in Sigma magazine, so they've got journal credit because we were able to work with our students as co-authors. Students like academic credit, that's kind of where they're going to university anyway.
Absolutely.
So to be able to say that we take it seriously, and we want you to have something serious as well as getting paid, which our student, we should mention, our student also get paid. So they get paid, but it also means something in terms of our field as well, and I think that's important. I think that appeals.
Excellent. Anything else?
Christine's put comments online. It just sort of relates to sort of what we're sort of saying about digital inequality. It's a real topic, especially for us in the global south. You notice how I kept dropping in and out of the session. It's too expensive, and there are huge systems and capacity gaps. I did my MA virtually, and these were exceeds inequalities.
That's actually what some of our students said during the pandemic that were out of school. So in Wolves, they've all got edge rope. And those that were living separately were actually using their mobile data packages. And I was in Abbi's role at the time in Bartlett, which is very much an architecture which has very heavy duty software. And they were either spending hundreds of pounds on software licenses to run it locally on their machine, or they were trying to wirelessly connect, which chews a lot of data because it's very visual heavy. And that was costing them an absolute fortune. Yeah.
Just, I mean, not that it addresses us directly, but we do actually try to build in several ways for students to engage with us. So again, this year's project, we have like one project a year, because we have other things as well. They've been able to express their ideas in an online survey using Mentimeter, so quite easy to access, even on a low bandwidth, I would say. They've been able to, this term, they've been able to engage by online focus groups. We did 2 of them, and then we did one face-to-face focus group on campus. focus group. So again, we do try and make sure that there are a number of ways that we can do this.
What are you planning next?
That we don't know. I'm
So see at the end of this one goes, I think, and then see possibly more.
It's been requested. I mean, one of the virtues of the digital that leaves traces, and one of the things that I think you discovered in that pandemic moment were traces of an incoherent student experience.
Yes.
That digital technologies help you make conceptually at least more coherent. So my question is, has any of that pulled through these last few years? Is the experience of students a little bit more coherent than it was?
So
Or did it revert back?
well, I'd say one of the things that, again, because for us, this has also been, we have shifted our practice based on the findings and these things. So for example, we did this in April 22. Sorry, dates, shouldn't bother.
Nobody knows.
We did it in April last year, whatever that was. And in September last year, ahead of the new academic year, we ran sessions for the module leads who were teaching that year, saying, look, and we brought our students to present to all the module leads and the faculty, talking about their experience at the beginning, talking about the issues that students had identified, and essentially saying, you can avoid this. Now is the time. You're building your sites now. Let's just all now rectify this kind of thing. And also that the problems that we used to get as a result of that kind of varied practice have been significantly fewer. Have a great amount of oversight with BLE, and it looks better to me. I think just having that leverage, saying actually prioritize this amongst your hectic workload, and also because I've been able to find out what these points are, I've made it very easy for you to go in and look at these specific things. You don't know actually how to use the data manager. Lots of people never heard of it. So I could just make a little sheet back and say, look, here are the resources addressing the main issues students have identified. And I went, I'll just do that. And then they've just done that. So I think there will always be high level of inconsistency, but I think we're moving the needle. And that's what this iterative research is about, moving the needle bit by bit.
And I just had two sort of, minor things. I think one of the things we found when we were exploring the student experience of the BLE is, and I think thankfully so, was that they were not actually saying we want the same. So they were actually not saying we want a completely streamlined experience. They did not say we want university-wide templates. They didn't even say they wanted faculty-wide templates. That was not the point of the quite. I think they were fair about that. What they were saying is that it has to be a deliberate job.
Yes, intentional.
That's intentional. It has to be reasonable. If it's internally consistent, we can deal with a bit of difference. It's fine if a lecturer or whatever professor wants to be creative or they have their own spin on things. We're all individuals, right? But there has to be a reason. They mentioned even small things like files being named in a nice way, assessment being in a clear place, reading lists being perfectly digital, up to date, these kind of things. And I think that's the second point, is that we know about these things. We know, I've been at UCL since 2010, been in the central arena team since 16. We know all these things. The NSS tells us what is not tells us, tells us some ideas about what is wrong, and we can do that. But what we found in the past, especially before we began this, is that academics did not really listen to us. And what I find with this is that it changes the narrative, because it's not Jesper telling me to change, it's not Abbi saying my Moodle should change, it's the students combined with research, combining with me, combining with Abbi, combining with the faculty. And again, that to me is a very different story. And it's much nicer to go with that story.
It's more of an intervention as well, because you're going, here's this, and here's the solution, because it gives Jesper and I the opportunity to engineer that solution, and we also tend to know who the students are talking about or where the students are talking about. So you can make those targeted interventions, and you've got the leverage of evidence. I think it's just made an enormous difference. So.
I would add to that actually at the beginning of the pandemic, it got an awful lot worse. And we did all kinds of their own weird and wonderful stuff. And oh my God.
Emphasis on the weird.
Yeah. And it has kind of got better, but it got an awful lot worse.
I think that many people will share that experience.
Just weird things, and just trying to do their own thing and using different tools to do the same thing, sometimes even on the same module, like someone might use Teams for a call and someone might use Zoom
And
Just
you can't
other
even
stuff.
you can't guess what these things will be. You sort of need that large sample size.
And it's also trying to guess what students need, and
Yeah.
again, that's, that was I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, so a lot of our colleagues in NH said, you know, students don't like continuous module dialogue, they don't like being, I think a lot of people heard the survey fatigue, which I think is a thing, that's clearly a thing, right? But again, so they thought it was like a silly thing to do, but when we talked to students, that never came up. Nobody said,
And a lot of them
nobody
wanted
said,
to be asked
they
more.
want to ask more, so right now it's 3 times per 10-week module is sort of the idea. You know, as an educator, I think it's an art to qualify, and sure you talk to your students all the time. That's a different story, right? But, you know, if we need a qualification 3 times, they were often saying more and more. So there was no idea that they were over surveyed. But again, if I got it told by colleagues, I said, how do you know better than me? How do you know? I've been working 15 years, I work for a small group, they don't want to be asking more. He would say, actually, we have it in black and white, and we have it both qualitatively, we have it quantitatively. I mean, that's even the hardest ANH people, I think, find that hard to then discuss with them. You're like, okay, maybe I should. Okay, we've had a positive experience with instrumentals for the first time in my time at UCL. Maybe something mentioned centrally, so there was a positive, it's actually working well with instrumentals. Maybe we should learn from them. It's like, what? What learn from us? And I think some of our colleagues just say, like, what's happening?
But again, being able to present that central body of information back to people as well, saying, look, this is our faculty, and we have a specific character and some very specific characteristics. This is what it's been like for us. I think it also helps other people understand that universities aren't these generic places where all faculties have the same experience. I think, certainly talking to my other colleagues, it's helped them kind of look at their faculties and maybe they aren't quite as weird or quite as well. There is a lot of character there. So I just think faculty level it can be a bit of an underappreciated level at which to understand.
And arts and humanities is a huge faculty.
And
A lot of universities separate them.
So we actually work with something called joint faculty, which is arts and humanities and social and historical sciences. And the reason I'm saying that is because I know the number, that's 10,500 students. So I think it's probably whether it's 4,000 or 5,000, but it's still, I have a colleague just moving to NSE, and that's a third of their, 10,500 is 2/3 of NSE. So yeah, it is huge.
10,500, there's as many as a lot of institutions.
Certainly is. Yeah.
That's enormous.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think that